professionals. This is the Supply Chain Industry Network. We are here to provide resources, support to help our colleagues who are here in Canada and they're still navigating the industry for job search, for career development, career transition. We are able to, provide our own resources, expertise, insights to help them get closer to their goals as far as job search and economic integration is concerned in Canada. So this is in a nutshell what we help with. And we want to appreciate our colleagues who have been providing their resources for over the last 6 years. They've been on this journey with us. They themselves, sometimes they have received resources from this network, and for these reasons, they have also been committed to helping those who are just starting the journey. So this is the story of our network. And usually we will have sessions of different types, provided you know we understand those challenges or those type of resources that are needed. However, we have a structure in terms of how we program our sessions. On the first week, we will usually welcome new folks into our group, onboarding, letting them know how we support, what we help with. The second week, which is the second Saturday, we will do a deep dive into a particular topic of interest. Last week, we covered the SWOT resume. It's a workshop where we had some of our colleagues also support in mentoring during that session. Today, it's usually mock interviews we will have in the third week, so that's where we are today. And the fourth Saturday, we would usually do an info session where we will talk about a particular industry topic. Maybe we bring in a guest or we do work with some of the colleagues that we have in our midst. So next week, we are planning to do a review of the PMI PM book. So for those who are planning to get certified in the PMP uh, uh, certification, we'll be providing some insights and also resources that will help them towards achieving this. Yes, having said that, I think we can get started. I've done a little bit introduction of myself, but I want our interview panelists to introduce themselves so that we can get started already. So I will hand it over to you, Bayo, Loki, and Jide, in very short format. Let's know about you and your experience, your expertise, your insights, and then we'll go over to the candidates for the interview today. Go ahead.
Thank you, Abby, for this opportunity to be the panelist for this mock interview. My name is Loki Ndochwa. I've been working in food and beverage industry for more than 15 years. So my expertise covers almost every area of supply chain management, supply chain planning, manufacturing operation, inventory management, warehousing. But my key focus is continuous improvement. How to help company get the most of their resources, improve productivity, day-to-day activities. I am also a holder of supply chain management certification with Supply Chain Canada, the biggest supply chain management association in Canada. And I am very happy to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Bayo Shinuga. I have over 20 years experience in engineering management, operations management, project management, and manufacturing operations, basically. I've worked in food, beverage, personal care products, and I currently work in electronics manufacturing assembly, electronics equipment assembly and manufacturing. PMP certified, have a green belt in Lean Six Sigma, and I'm happy to be here. I take this particular session um, very seriously because I was also a participant as a my first few years when I joined the platform. I was at well, yes, I participated, yes, as an interviewee on the platform, and it has helped shape some of the successes I've had in other interviews. Um, I'm based out of Saskatchewan. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Over to you, Jide.
All right. Can everybody hear me? So my name is Jide.
Yes.
I've been working supply chain planning for the last 20, 23, 24 years. So that really is my forte. So supply chain planning, manufacturing planning. So anything supply planning, capacity planning, demand planning, material requirements planning. That's what I've been doing over the last couple of years. I've worked in currently in food and beverage. So I work in confectionery as a senior manager for demand planning. Prior to that, I was a senior manager for supply planning in the cosmetics environment. And prior to that, I was a master planner. And then prior to that, I was a supply chain director for planning with Procter and Gamble. So again, most of my career has been in the planning space. A few stints in logistics here and there, a few stints in procurement and purchasing, but mostly within the planning, what I would like to call the planning subdiscipline. I'm APIC certified, so CSCP, CPIM, and I've also got the Demand Driven Institute, DDS, Demand Driven Planning Professional as well. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. Hopefully, we can help you prepare for whatever interview that you have.
Yeah, so Jide, I don't know, maybe you're not able to show your camera. We would like to connect the face with the name. So maybe you were not really you didn't really know that you were not showing on the camera. Yeah. Okay, great, great. So that's Jide there. It's a very supportive colleague, and as you would notice, he has quite experience in the supply chain planning function, and he's based out of Toronto as well. So we have people across Canada here. We have Bayo from Saskatoon, we have Loki from Quebec, and then we have Judy from Ontario, and I'm here representing Western Canada as well. Okay, so let's go for it. I think so far we have I believe we have Opeyemi here on stage with us. So Opeyemi, I would also like you to introduce yourself. Let's meet you. I will just be facilitating here. So once you're done with your introduction, then we can, start with the interview. While we hopefully the other guys are able to join us. I think Victor is gonna join us. I think he has some connections problem later, but let's start with Opeyemi for now. Opeyemi, you're on mute for now,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
maybe.
All right. So, thank you very much for this opportunity to do this interview. And it's one of the aspects of my career growth that I think I really need to focus on, because I believe I have good experience. Unlike most of the panelists, I think I have less than half of most of the experience. I think I had 20 years, I had 22 years and thereabout. I have just about 7 years of experience, spanning supply, material, and distribution planning in the food industry and in personal and home care in the industry. And I'm aspiring to gain my CSCP certification before the end of this year. I'm in the process of doing that. I think that's about it.
Okay. So let me just talk briefly about the interview format. So what we would like to do here, Opeyemi, is to support you to provide constructive feedback that will help you to get better. And I'm also going to inform you in advance that most of the guys that have worked with us on our interviews here have been, um, they received job offer within a month period. So the feedback you're getting here is going to be very, very helpful towards converting your next interview to a job offer. So, what we just want to do is to present an environment. We want to replicate an interview environment, but the difference here is that we're going to be providing you with a positive and constructive feedback and in a supportive manner. So that's what the format is going to be. And then there will be each panelist will be asking you question, and then we'll be providing you feedback. And any panelists that will also like to add to that feedback can also do so. So having said that, I will start with Jide to present his first question, and then we'll go to Lucky after that, and then Bayo.
Off and my mute went off. Okay, good. So, Opayemi, thank you very much for coming to the interview. So as Bioda has said, we'll be asking you a couple of questions. Sometimes you'll see that I'm writing things down or I'm not giving you eye contact. Please do not be distracted by that. I'm just merely taking notes and I'm not scoring you, right? So the way that I would like, in order to manage the time and for you also to be straight to the point, please make sure that you're utilizing the STAR method in answering the questions. And also, if you can, either the STAR or the CAR method. So state the situation, the task that you had to do, the actions you took, and the result of the action. That will really help us to understand your antecedents. Be free to take examples from any part of your past. It doesn't really matter the part of your past you want to take an example from, as long as that example answers to the question. If there's a question that is not clear, please feel free to say that it's not clear, and we can always come back to the question. So having said that, I think the first thing that I would want to understand from you is tell us a bit about your journey in supply chain planning, what led you up to this point, and why is this role of interest to you?
Thank you very much, Judy. My journey in supply chain started about 10 years ago with a company in Lagos, Nigeria, GMT. GMT is a third-party manufacturing and logistics company, and I worked in the capacity of a logistics analyst for inbound and import and export. And prior to that, I have my academic background is in accounting and economics. However, 2 years into my logistics career, I found that I had fallen in love with supply chain. I decided to move on to PZ Cousins as a distribution planner. While as a distribution planner, due to my level of performance, I was recommended for a role as a supply chain project manager to oversee both food, personal care, and home care project management within supply chain, basically collaborating with teams within supply chain and outside of supply chain to ensure project delivery to the agreed milestone targets and project budget. And after that, I was promoted to become a supply chain planner, basically monitoring the supply, material, and distribution part of the business for personal care, basically the soap industry, the soap factory for the business. After that, I moved on to Canada to become a distribution planner with FGF Brands, which I currently work with. FGF Brand is a manufacturer of artisans, cakes, and other confectionaries in the industry. Why I'm interviewing for this position is basically because I believe I have the requisite skills and experience to excel on this role. And I believe it's time for me to move into a bigger bigger organization with bigger width, and also a bigger a role with that looks into the holistic view of supply chain to help me to challenge me in utilizing my supply chain skills that I've gathered over the years.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions from the other panelists before I jump into the other questions that I
Do we give feedback immediately, or do we give feedback after every question? So you mean,
Yeah, I think we can do it right away. If we have feedback we want to provide to him, that way we can manage our.
Okay. Well, Yemi, okay, Yemi, from my end, your introduction was pretty okay. You give us a quick walkthrough of all you've done, and I liked the fact that you had a flow. I will just, I don't have any downside on my part, except to just say, and this is me. It's not. For some people, when you went, you said that you were just as you were moving your different roles. Yeah, okay. No, let me leave it out. But it's fine. I like the way your introduction went and it flowed, and that's all I have. I don't have any because of the question, because of the way the question was put. That's why I'll leave out what I wanted to say. But it's okay. I see Lucky is laughing. Thank you. That's all for me.
Yeah, I think so. So like Bayo said, the flow was good. What I would have, so in that kind of question for me, when I ask those kind of questions, really is I'm looking for that person to already sell themselves, right? Sell themselves to as to why that role, why they are important and why they are good for the role, right? And so besides just mentioning all of the things that you've done and what has brought you to that point, right? It's also important as well to state a few things, a few achievements on each of the roles, right? So like something critical, something important that you did, that you achieved on the role. Even though the question did not directly say that, usually when I ask those kind of questions in an interview, what I'm looking for is for the person to say, well, I was a logistics analyst, and while on that role, I did XYZ. So again, logistics analyst, this is what my role and responsibility was. The most important thing that I'm truly proud of that I delivered on that role was this. And then thereafter, I moved to a different role as well. So that's something that I think that you need to kind of keep in mind, right? The answer has to be short, but at the same time, it has to have some, what I would call some meat inside it, right? So the role, what you did, the title, your responsibility, what your scope was, and what you consider as your the proud thing that you did. Just one proud thing that you did on that role that will warrant you to have moved on to other roles or that will make you fit for bigger responsibilities. That's just what I would
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Sorry, just add. I was expecting that when he said that he was a project manager, I was expecting he would expatiate on just a little project that he succeeded with. Well, at that point, I was immediately he said that that was what I was hoping to hear, but then he just flew. Okay, but yes, I totally agree with Ajit there.
All right, Lucky, anything from you?
Just I think that OPM did really well, but sometimes we don't have enough time to present ourselves because if you want to highlight too much your experience, competencies, background, that will take a lot of time. So what I usually recommend is to start by the number of years of experience because hiring manager want to hear that. then move on key realization, maybe 1, 2, or 3, something like that. You did very well by mentioning promotion. You were promoted, and that is a really, really strong word. So me, so that was good. Think that you will have less than 5 minutes to introduce yourself. Go back and work on your elevator pitch to fit 5 minute time frame. As Jai mentioned, think about situation, action, and result, and draft that elevator pitch. That will really help you to present yourself in less than 5 minutes.
Very much.
Okay, so moving on to other questions, right? So I got a couple of questions here, and I'm going to start with tell me about a time why you were a supply chain planner, because part of your experience was you were a supply chain planner in personal care, doing, handling everything related to distribution, replenishment, and all whatnot. So tell me about the time when you found out that demand was consistently having a negative bias, and you needed to resolve the service issues as a result. What did you do, and how did you go about managing it?
Okay, thank you very much, today. As a supply chain planner handling the supply material and distribution bit of planning, I'd noticed that a particular SKU over a period of 3 months has had a different, the actual has been different from what has been forecasted over time. And usually weekly, monthly, I do a check comparing actual and forecast to see if there's a difference. And basically, this SKU has had a consistent variance over time. So what I was able to, first things first, what I did was to have a discussion with the demand planner in charge of this particular category to understand what might be driving this. Is this as a result of a one-off? Is it as a result of a one-off? Is it is there a change in the market? Is it competitor related? Is it economic condition related? Just to understand the reason for the consistency in this change. And what I was able to gather from this situation, what I was able to gather is that it was a one-off where it was going to go on for a while because they've gathered information that the competitor was having some issues, therefore were experiencing an increased demand. So what I did after that was to first see, are we able to accommodate this within the current scope of our production and the materials we have coming in? Are we able to accept this? Because I've gotten a quantified value of what we should expect. Are we able to accommodate this? So I had discussions with the factory. Are we able to accommodate this? Do we have the capacity to accommodate this? What do we need to move around resources and all of that? That was the first thing I did. Secondly, I looked at the position of my inventory and material to check on if we're able to accommodate this, if we had to expedite orders, if we had to place more orders, and what exactly it is we need to do. In this particular situation, I had enough inventory. I just had one or two locally sourced materials that I just had to call off because luckily for me, the material is vendor managed. We had vendor managed inventory, so we just had to do some call offs on that. And since production and material has been resolved, we're able to shove this gap, and we didn't experience any lost sales. And since this change, this variance was just going to unexpectedly just going to happen for 3 more months. We're able to cover the gap, and it just happened for 3 months. So we're able to cover the gap.
Good, thank you. Feedback?
Lucky, you want to start?
But to me, that was a good one. That was really good. So I don't have too much to say about that. So well done.
Good. That was a good answer. So first of all, started with the situation, right? So I like the fact that you started with the situation, right? And one thing that maybe you could have slightly improved on that is, when questions are asked, like that's a technical question, right? And it's okay. So first thing is first of all help the interviewer to understand that you understand what it means when somebody says there's a negative bias, right? Which means essentially, so you did say that there was a difference in actuals versus forecast, right? Over a certain period of time. But what kind of differences were you seeing, right? Were you seeing that actuals were a lot higher than forecast, or actuals were lower than forecast, right? So being able to state specifically what you understand by negative bias in the framing of the context or in the framing of the situation really helps somebody like me, who is looking at when I have a conversation with a planner and I just say, hey, why is your bias negative over the last 3 or 6 months? They understand immediately what I'm talking about, right? Versus, me trying to help them understand what's the difference between a negative bias and a positive bias. So great that you stated the context first and foremost. So that's great. I like the fact that the actions that you took was first and foremost before getting into the diagnostics and trying to solve the problem. You wanted to understand the problem. Was it because of competition? Was it because of something that was going on in the market? Was it something that was one-off? And so on and so forth. And then you talked about the steps that you took. What you did not land, which is oftentimes what I see with most people, is not landing the result, right? So after you've taken all of those steps, what changed in service, right? Remember that there was a negative bias that was impacting service. So you are taking care of the negative bias part of the question, but then what about the service part of the question, right? So what all of those things that you did, how did it improve service? So did it, service is usually measured by either OT for case fill, right? Or something like on-time delivery, right? So what OT were we at? And after taking those steps, how many points of improvement? Even if, let's say, your case fill rate was maybe 80%, and after taking those steps, or all the call-ups, working with the clients, increasing your safety stock, whatever it is that you did, even if you are not reaching the target, did you improve your case fill by 3 points or 4 points? So your case fill went from 80% to 85, even though your target was a 95. But at least you can show that the actions that you took resulted in some kind of concrete KPI improvement, as the case may be. So that's the only feedback that I'm going to. Bayo, do you have anything for him?
No, not you covered most of it. Just to start with, I really like the fact that he used a lot of the keywords that every recruiter expects to hear when a question goes out, especially a technical question like this. You expect to hear certain words or certain key phrases from somebody who is a professional in that field, and that's how we know who is in the field and who is yeah. So and I like the fact that you use a lot of those keywords, which was very, very good. I just wanted to. And the last thing was what Gini said. Your landing, it was like, if you enter a plane and the plane is trying to land and then you have a bumpy landing. That was the way it kind of felt. Your landing, you landed, but we expected to hear one or two more specifics in your results, which well, Mr. Gida has already given you what is that. But I just felt that that this landing could have been a little bit more impactful. But apart from that, that was a good take on the question. Thank you.
Okay. So does Lucky want to go for it this time?
I think Lucky is jumped out. He's
Oh, he
had
dropped
to
off.
move.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bayo, do you have a question that you would like
Okay.
to
All
ask?
right. Yeah. So I have one here. Um, like I said, my background is operations management. So the good thing for you is operations people are always at the receiving end of whatever the or are in the middle between the supply planning and warehouse and inventory. We are your customers, technically. So I want to look at inventory management, right? Inventory management is is a balancing act. Is a balancing act between the push and the pull. So it's how looking at how do you ensure product availability. It's a balancing act between product availability and holding costs, right? So the question is, how do you determine optimum inventory levels and manage inventory across multiple locations or channels? How do you how do you do that? How do you look at inventory? And how do you know what is the optimal inventory position? You know, based on your experience.
Okay, thank you very much, Bayo. So to ascertain the optimal level of inventory to hold, as you mentioned, things to consider is, holding cost for the inventory. So first and what I do is I like to know or have an idea of the status of each of the items that I have. When I mean status, I'm talking about the ABC analysis for each of the items that I'm holding. I need to know their contribution to the final bottom line of the organization. So that's my first step, because that helps me to understand how much inventory I need to hold for each category be it material or finished goods. So that's my first point. Another thing I need to also take into consideration is the forecast um for the finished goods, and also the definitely material forecast for each of the materials. That's another thing I take into consideration. Is the forecast stable? Do we have a stable forecast? So I'll definitely be looking at history. Has the SKUs been trending to what we have, or has there been disparities? Is it stable? Is it unstable? That would also feed into my decision on how much on each of the material or finished goods I would be holding. And another thing I'll look at is service level. Service level for which service level it has been agreed for each of the SKUs, and that's all product family, and that would also help with making my decision on materials. So looking at each of this, so I'll go back to the top. For my stable SKUs, I know that if 10 has been forecasted, I know I'll definitely sell 10. So I don't need to hold a lot of safety on each of that. So in coming up with the safety, I'll be looking at the lead time of getting first the material. For materials, I'll look at lead time of getting the material to the factory. So from when I place the order to when I'm able to get them to when I'm able to get the material at the factory. That's one bit for materials. For finished goods, I would look at the lead time from either the plant or the distribution center to the final location where we'll be needing the SKU. So with that, I'll be able to determine my safety stock for each, if it's for finished goods for each of the locations, and um if it's for material, yes, I'll be looking at lead time of getting from order, getting the material into the warehouse. So oh, so yeah, definitely. So that's what I'll be doing to ensure stability across my inventory process for both materials and finished goods. Yeah, I've answered all the questions.
Okay.
You are muted,
Yeah,
but you can.
you're on mute.
Oh, I didn't have to put myself on mute. All right, thank you very much. That was a good good answer. Again, very concise. Like I said the last time, I like the fact that you went ahead with certain key phrases used in that sector. Things like ABC analysis. You talked about the forecast history, going back to look at what the products are going to be doing from the finished goods end and from the raw material end. You talk to service levels. Uh, for service levels, you could have you need to look at two things there. You need to look at what sales what the sales is. Actual sales levels, and also the other part was what operations what the factory is able to convert. Because yeah, the factory capacity was when you are looking at service levels, manufacturing capacity should also have been part of your service level dynamics. Because if sales can order 100 things, if the factory can only do 10, no matter what you do, you know, they can't meet the inventory. So you must begin to think about what else do you do. Do you ask as demand planner? Do you say, okay? Do we do third party manufacturing? Or what kind of, how do we meet the demand? if manufacturing if the factory cannot meet the demand, but at the same time, when you talk of safety stock, which I like, and um service levels also looks at, if your manufacturing capacity is at 100 and sales is only asking for 10, then you have to go back all the way to now begin to reduce. What do you do with all the excess inventory you have? That kind of stuff. But yes, I liked the way you answered. It showed that at least you understand the chain and how they interact with each other. So that's good for me. Thank you. So Jide.
Good. Yeah. So the answers were good. I think that one thing that you just need to be careful of for interviews is, even when a question is asked that is framed in the sense of what would you do in this kind of situation, right? Typically, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience. Usually, what I've seen, either interviews that I've attended or interviews that I have conducted, is I'm looking for that person to tell me an example or a scenario that they have encountered, even if it's a question that is saying, what would you do in this kind of instance, right? A scenario that you've encountered that required you to either recalculate inventory levels or to redetermine your inventory strategy and stuff like that. Now, in the event that you've not really encountered something like that, then for me, the answer would always be, if a situation like that were to prop up in my operation, these are the steps that I would take. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then don't forget, we talked about landing, right? So there's always the context, the action, and the result. So there's a context, this is what I would do. The actions, this is the steps that I'm going to take. And hopefully I would expect that inventories will be, I don't know, the inventory will be 10% of cost of goods sold, or something like that. That gives the person the understanding, or gives the person the confidence that, yes, even though this person may not have encountered that situation before, they have the playbook. And if they should encounter the situation, They are very clear on what they are going to do and what they are going to be looking at to tell them that what they've done made sense. So the landing is critical, even when you're talking about what you will do. Remember that in interviews, you're mostly talking about your antecedents, the experiences you've had, the situations you've encountered. If you've not encountered a situation and you are going to be talking about something futuristic, right? You also need to land it with, well, having done this, I would expect that if, let's say, with that kind of scenario, let's say, your stockouts were usually, you were stocking out 3 days or 4 days out of 30 days in a month, that with that should reduce the stockouts to 2 days or 1 day or something like that, right? So always think about, I have a context, even if it's futuristic, I have actions, and either the result of those actions or something that I will use, a KPI that I will use to check that the actions that I took, would yield the right result or they are yielding the right result. That would just be my feedback. Okay. So, Lucky, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I am back. Sorry, I lost my connection. So I am back in the panel now. I just want to add that we should be thinking also about collaboration because you don't work alone. And nowadays, companies want to save money. They want to reduce costs as much as possible. So if you mention just-in-time inventory management, that is a good way to put it. And if you want just-in-time management of inventory to work, you have to work with suppliers. So you should not be working in the silo. You should involve the suppliers, operation, and all those key players that produce or manage inventory. This means that when you involve everybody, this means that you are a great team player. You are not working in the silo, right? For example, to keep the good level of inventory, you work with production manager or operation manager to know what is the actual need, demand. You work also with a supplier if they can supply the material that they needed, and then what is the actual capacity of the plant to store those material. So hiring manager want to know those technical terms that you are using, not just abstract. So use technical terms for that. Thank you.
Okay. So, piggybacking on that inventory question, I'm quite curious as to how you dealt with a manufacturing facility that has had issues with attainment, right? So, tell me about a time where you you had to work and recover credibility. You had to recover planning credibility and your stock buffers while working with a plant that had a consistent attainment issue. What did you do and how did you go about solving that problem?
I'm sorry, Jide, please can you rephrase that question, please?
Okay, so tell me about a time where you were able to recover planning credibility or maybe even your inventories while working with a plant or a factory that had attainment issues.
Okay, thank you very much, Jide. This question brings to mind a particular SKU, which is a seasonal SKU. is a seasonal SKU. The seasonality usually falls towards the end of the year and the first few months of the year. It's seasonal because it goes with the Harmattan condition in sub-Saharan part of Africa. And the SKU is in the plant is affected with situations whereby we have old machinery, so the machinery is unreliable, and other environmental conditions in that plane. So an example, something that comes to mind is we had we had a plan for the year for that particular SKU, how to deal with it. But unfortunately for us, the season started earlier than we had planned. And what we had to do is, first and foremost, I had to discuss with the factory because some of the issues we've been having from that particular plant, aside from the constant breakdowns with the machinery for that particular SKU, is also that we had more demand than the capacity that we could actually churn out from that particular plant. So one of the things we had to do with that plant is first and foremost sit with the factory, understand, okay, this is the capacity we have. How can we improve the capacity of that um, particular plant? And one of the things we're able to come up with is introduce additional shifts to the process, introduce additional shifts. Prior to that, we were running three shifts, that's 2 4 7, but 5 days a week. We had to increase that to 2 4 7. That's three shifts, 7 days a week. That was the first thing we did. And to the actual machinery itself, are the adjustments we could do? Is there ways we could maybe increase the lines, to ensure increase productivity, so as to ensure that we don't miss on service? Because as I said earlier, this was coming as a result of the season starting earlier than we had planned because Hamilton was coming earlier than planned. So are we able to increase the lines? And unfortunately, we were not able to do that because by the time we were able to react in that way, the season would have been over. So that thought process had to be dropped. Now, what do? We had to ensure constant communication with the sales and demand team to let them know that this is what we had planned for, which is what we have all agreed, but this is the situation at hand with what was coming through from sales. And we had to ensure that we had constant communication, daily updates, weekly updates to share the position of what we had, and, also show our plan adherence in the factory, plan achievement and plan adherence in the factory, so that if we say we produce 100,000, this is what we are producing. And we're in situations where we are falling short, go back to the factory and understand why that was happening. Is there a machine breakdown? Do we need to change the parts? Do we need CapEx approval? And all of that. At the end of the day, would I say, unfortunately for us, we're not able to achieve 100% of the sales because first and foremost, materials were not even coming in as fast, or the chunk of the materials were already coming in at the middle of the season. So we were not able to achieve 100%. We're able to achieve about 89% of the forecast that we had initially received.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go into into the feedback, I'm going to piggyback on that and and ask a probing question. So, given what has happened and you were not able to meet the requirements and you were not able to meet the sales, if you think about it, what would you have done differently, knowing what you know today?
Um, First, what I think I would do differently is, being able to react to such is first, since we have an idea of what we should expect every year, I think the first thing I would do is to push for approval to stock build over time, anticipating the season, stock build over time. Probably if the season is starting in October, and since I know I have capacity issues anyways, is to ensure that we stop build maybe from June, maybe at from a low rate and ramp up as we approach the season. So this would first help us to ensure service by ensuring that we have adequate adequate material for production and adequate finished goods for sale at every point in time.
Okay, thank you. Any feedback? I think the first, so I can start off. I think it was good. The answer to the question. So stating the context and providing an action and wrapping up with some kind of a result. Even though, yes, we did not meet the sales the sales forecast and the sales expectation as a result of all of that issue, it was good that you stated it, right? It was good to state it because sometimes in an interview, people think, everything has to be all 100% positive results and stuff. And as planning, one of the key things that we like to say, especially in planning leadership, is a plan is as good until, or there's a saying that there's something we say, every plan is good until it comes in contact with the customer. So that's something that was good to state that, yes, after doing all of that, yes, you still didn't meet the results, but you were able to deliver X% of the expectation. So again, don't shy away from stating actual numbers, right? So we didn't deliver 100%, but we were able to deliver 80% or 70% of the sales expectation. If we had not done the things that we did, we were tracking to deliver only 60%. So even though there was a failure below the 100, you didn't get to the 100, you're still showing that if I didn't do what I did to drive the direction or to drive things differently, I would not have been able to achieve the 80%. I would have achieved 60%, which meant that something that you did, even though did not allow you to get to the 100, it still gave you a 20 points of improvement. So keep that in mind as well. When I asked the other question around what would you have done differently, yeah, it was a good answer, pre-building. But remember, based on what Bayo said, inventory is a balancing act. So when you're pre-building, you also need to be cognizant of pre-building to the extent that it's not impacting your inventory holding and causing you to have extra warehouses and all whatnot that can overall impact your cost of goods sold, right? So pre-building is good. Planning the plant to its actual performance. I know manufacturing folks don't like to hear that, but you have to plan a plant to its actual proven performance to be able to understand what really can be done, right? So planning the plan to actual performance will help you know this is what's possible, but this is what we need. So then do we go and do contract manufacturing? Do we go and source for external sourcing? Or if you cannot source for external sourcing, then a conversation with the sales organization becomes, this is what the plant can do given its proven and demonstrated capability, then we need to allocate. Okay, allocation is not something that sales folks like to hear, but as planning people, it's one of the cards that we have to play, right? So being able to say that helps the interviewer to know that if you are in a corner where you cannot dig yourself out of that corner with any planning kind of actions, then the only other recourse is to request for allocation. Because if you are doing everything that you are supposed to do, and the plant can only attain at 40% of the production plan or the supply plan, then you are left with no other thing but to allocate. Then you can start having conversations around which are the big customers, which are your A customers that you would like to protect first before anybody else, right? And those kind of things. So yeah, good. Those are good answers, but just keep that in mind, right? Even if you are going to be landing with we didn't actually deliver what we wanted to deliver. Well, if you didn't do anything, what would have been your result? And then when you compare that versus the result you got by doing something, Even if it's a 5-point improvement, it is an improvement. Bio, question from you, or Lucky, question from you.
Yeah, I think we should have Lucky now. Your question,
Yeah.
please.
Yes, before I start, I think that there is a question for the candidate in the Q&A. I just saw it.
Okay, so after adding a shift, did you face any bottlenecks? How did you resolve them? So this is coming from Gautier. So, Okwemi, would you want to answer that question?
Yes. So after adding a shift, I think while answering the question initially, I mentioned that the plans for this particular SKU has always been experiencing breakdowns. So even while we've added 2 additional days, actually, not a shift, 2 additional days to the production, um, we experienced increased breakdowns, but we had to do like a cost benefit to see if this increased breakdowns and the benefits we are getting from the increased breakdowns, if the benefits were worth it after increasing it. And we realized that the benefits were actually worth it because yes, even though we had some breakdowns, the breakdowns were um, things that were able to be fixed with in-house labor.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. So far, Opeyemi, you are doing well. So I think that by the end of this session, you will gain some insight on how to answer interview question. And then I think that the next one you will be very comfortable. Okay, let's go to supply chain disruption. Supply chain disruption can have significant impact on operation. How do you mitigate the risk and ensure continuity in supply chain processes?
Thank you, Lucky. One of the things to do is, as a planner, one must be able to anticipate issues that might occur within your supply chain, either based on experience or based on issues that are ongoing currently, or based on insight on what might occur in the future. And an example I would like to tap into is the situation we faced during COVID, whereby we're having container shortages at the shipping locations, we're having congestions at both the import and receiving ports. And so what I was able to do with this situation is that first I'd done scenario analysis because a couple of my SK materials were affected with this, and thereby causing reduction in production of what I was able to produce, and also meet up with the supply plan that I had. So what I was able to do with this is first and foremost have discussions with the demand and sales team and let them understand the situation at hand. This is what is happening, and our production, what we had said would supply is this. However, based on what we have today, this is what is obtainable this month, next month. Give them a projection of what is, and based on information coming in after that, with the team trying to resolve issues, we say, okay, yes, this is how we're able to trend. This is how much the team is able to get. So that was the first course of action, to discuss with our sales colleagues. to let them understand what the situation is. Number two, we discuss with procurement to understand alternatives. What can we do? Can we, because most of these materials I'm talking about imported materials, what can we do locally? Are we able to source some of these materials locally? Are we able to look at alternative means of transportation? I know, yes, we usually bring in through sea shipments. Are we able to freight some of this? Yes, it's going to have some cost implications. Do the cost benefit analysis to understand if it's feasible to actually bring in some of these materials in by other means of transportation. And yes, I'd mentioned locally sourced, get technical quality team to ensure and qualify some of these local vendors to see if we're able to pull from some of them. And the result of this also helped us, going forward, first to localize some of our imported materials to ensure that we have local sources for most of them. Even some of the ones that were not affected, we had to look into localizing some of them. One, to ensure that we are dual sourced across board, each material, ensure that if we're single sourced at any point for any material, ensure that we are dual sourced across board. So those were the things I was able to do to minimize disruption. And for that particular situation, there was a turbulent season. We were able to achieve about 70% of what we had initially planned. And if we had not done that, it would probably have been a little less, but the team had to all hands on deck to ensure that we're able to achieve at least 70%.
Okay, good. Any comment?
No, I think that
Uh,
was good. Based on I mean, that's what when I think about it, that's what again. I like the fact that it's a question that speaks to what would you do in the case of a disruption, right? So
Disruption, yeah.
it's a what if question, right?
Yes.
But you went back to say, hey, you know what, we did have a disruption, which everybody in the supply chain world knows. We had a disruption in the terms of COVID, and this and this and this and this and these were the kind of things that you were able to do. And the results that you got, that you were able to get out of it as well. So I think that was a good way to answer that question. Like I said, if you got a what if question, either you approach that question with a scenario that is similar that you've encountered in the past, even though it's a what if question, or if you've not experienced that scenario before, to then go ahead and give like kind of a toolbox, skill box kind of answer, right? As to, well, if I were to encounter this, this is what I have in my skill box to do to be able to attend to that kind of situation if I've never attended to it before. So that was a good one. I don't think I don't have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that teamwork, cross collaboration between you, sales, production, and that's really good because when there's a problem, it's not only you, but that will affect also people working with you. So it's always good to involve all those people, internal customer and internal supplier. Always. You are in the middle. So you should consider the idea of all those people. You mentioned also the brainstorming. That's a good point. And a mitigation strategy was a local sourcing. That is good. So always think about a plan B because forecasting will never ever be 100% correct. That can fail and we can have disruption every time. So well done for that. I also noticed that you respond to this question using the STAR approach: situation, task, action, and the result. So that is a good way to go. Um, Yeah, I don't know if Bayo have something to add to this.
No, 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 nothing to add to this question. You've covered all the bases on this question. Well done, Akwayemi.
Okay, switching on to a different question. Um, so I wanna understand a situation in which, while you were working in any of your roles in the past, where you had a conflicting idea about a supply or a demand strategy with either your manager or your director or a VP. You had a completely different point of view. How did you go about driving your point of view across, and how did you go about dealing with that situation?
Um, okay, thank you, Jide. A situation that comes to mind is um, I and my line manager were reviewing our budget supply numbers for the upcoming year after receiving the budget forecast for the year. And we had realized a particular product family whereby um, the budget had remained flat from the previous year or from the ongoing year. And, usually the budget for the forecast for that particular product family usually has been flat consistently over the years. But however, the current year which we were in, we had an actual spike whereby month-to-month actual spike whereby what the team was actually selling is different from what they said they would sell. And discussing this with my line manager, my action was that I think, based on the situation we had faced this year, I think we should also create more buffers in supply to ensure that, should this particular situation occur again in the following year, we're able to, you know, mitigate any risk, because the situation we're facing in that current year is that, we had to air freight more, we had to, fall short on requirements and things like that. However, he was of the opinion that we've discussed demand, this has been discussed and this has been agreed that, this would remain flat. So we should match with what demand was saying. But I propose that, let's have more discussions with our demand colleagues too and sales colleagues, to understand what exactly is happening. Yes, we know that we're facing this situation currently is just been coming as an abnormal demand request, but we need to deep dive and understand what the situation is. So we had a discussion from their feedback. They were not so sure on what was happening, but they felt it was just a one-off and shouldn't go on into next year. So what and my line manager agreed was yes, we would go with what he has said initially, agreed um, to match supply with what demand is. But I insisted that we put in a caveat that should there be any significant change with what we have in the forecast, budgeted forecast, these are this and this is what we would have to do. This and this is how we'll be able to react to the situation. It's based on lead times of materials and all of this. We'd only be able to react in this way. We'll only be able to react after this couple of weeks, that couple of weeks, one. Two, if we are to expedite materials, this is going to be the cost of some of these things. Is either going the air freight way or buying locally for some of these materials, which will be more expensive as against if you are bringing it in. So we had built in some of those assumptions into supply to show that, this is, yes, we'll go with what we've received, but these are the assumptions if it goes above what we're expecting.
Okay, great. And how did you resolve the situation and the issue with your manager? Was it that, okay, you eventually left things the way they were, or you eventually went ahead and kept the supply the way it was, knowing fully well that you had discussed the caveats with the rest of the organization?
Oh, yes. So what I said is yes, we had agreed to go with what he has said, which is keep the supply also flat with what the demand is, but that it insisted we added the caveats. And he agreed with that, that yes, we know, yes, this is what's happening, but we also had to give ourselves that caveat so everybody is on the same page and understands that, this is the situation if things change.
Okay, great. That that's a good answer. And the reason why I asked that question is because when you work in supply chain planning, you will deal with conflicts. Conflicts with the commercial people, conflicts with manufacturing, and you will have a different point of view versus people in your hierarchy, right? So your directors and your VPs and all whatnot. So I think stating your point of view and the data that you've considered. So for that kind of question, is stating your point of view, the data that I've considered, things like over the last 1 year, your forecast accuracy metrics has been this, your WMAP has been this, bias has been this. As a result, we've had to do XYZ over the course of the 1 year. If you look back 2-3 years, this is what I've seen. It seems like it's a pattern, or it seems like every other 2 years this thing happens. So the next 2 years is coming upon us next year, right? So and then you state your point of view. I mean, again, it's a fact of life. Sometimes your director will override you. Sometimes your VP will tell you this is what needs to happen because there are other things that they see that you don't see. But yeah, having those conversations and you driving the conversation around, let's go talk to somebody else, let's go make sure that they are very clear of the implication if the demand starts to spike. Then these are the cost implications, these are the things that we're doing. We will be able to react, but being able to react will mean XYZ. And that really is the job of a planner. The job of a planner really is to say, hey, is to validate what everybody is saying and put the data and the what ifs behind it and say, hey, if this is what you want to do, this is what can be the implication of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then let everybody be very clear about what the reaction time is and all whatnot. So yeah, that for me was a well answered, well provided answer, and I'm good with that. Bio Loki.
I agree with you on all your points. The key thing that I'd like to just tell Opemi is he needs to work on his landing as much as possible on the conclusion of his because you say so much and you give a good example of the process, but when you finish, excuse me, I was waiting for it's like how do I put it? I'm going to digress and talk about a comedian. If you listen to a comedian, if you go to a comedy club, a comedian always has a punchline, and no matter how interesting the story is, he needs to finish. And interview is just like that. Your story must lead you to a conclusion, to a punchline. And like Jay has said the last time, it doesn't have to be all a rosy. Because I've worked in manufacturing, I've worked in situations where we didn't meet our annual forecast, or we had a situation where a machine broke down, and the planners told us, sorry, that the sales says that we need to deliver this. But when you're talking of what you have done, you have to land it somewhere and land it successfully. So I just want you to focus on that. You might not be able to course correct as we go on today, but think about that, and also think about what Lucky said. Your every question has you need to give every question a time limit in your head. That way, it helps you to not over talk. And then what happens to us sometimes is we over talk, and then we now realize that I don't have time. So you now don't land. You just cut, and then the person is now like, after all this talk, where is the end? So it's that fine balance, which is why having this interview session is important sometimes to help you see that, okay, you can say everything, but not over talking, and understand that you need to close. is important. So that's where I would leave my observations. But as to the specifics of that particular role, yes, you nailed it. But thank you.
Yeah, you guys always said everything. So remember, situation, task, action, result. Less than 3 minutes for every question is a good place to start. So don't talk too much because sometimes they have 3, 5, or 10 candidates to interview. And when you talk also too much, sometimes good idea will be buried in your talking. So be concise as you can. That's my advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that everybody's correct, right? So what you saw me do at the end of that question was to probe, right? So not all interviewers are nice. So some interviewers are they when you don't land, and a good collaborative interviewer will probe you to try and get that landing out of you, right? That's typically my style of interviewing, right? If somebody has said a good story and they're not quite landing, I will probe to try and get the landing. I will probe first time, second time. If they're not still landing, I'm going to move on, right? But not all interviewers will probe you for a landing. So you need to keep that in mind. It's always the situation, the task,
I agree.
and the result. You always have to land. You always have to land, right? Um, Lucky, do you have a question or bio?
I
Yeah,
want to I want to
yeah.
take a question. I'm going to digress a little. Um, so the question is it goes like this. Uh, Continuous improvement is essential in supply chain planning. Can you provide an example of a process improvement initiative that you led or participated in that resulted in any cost savings or increased efficiency or improved customer satisfaction? Um, a continuous improvement project that you were part of. Tell us about it.
Thank you very much, Bayo. An example that comes to mind, is, one of my biggest achievements as a supply chain planner with PZ Cousins, which was had achieved about a 25% reduction in inventory level. And one of the major things I've done, is to include some certain processes with what we had existing to ensure that this wasn't just going to be a one-off reduction; it was going to be a continuous process. And looking at the situation we had, the first thing I did was to look at slow and obsolete stock. That was my first course of action, to look at slow and obsolete stock. First, understand why we've been accumulating slow and obsolete stock over time. Number one, two, see how I could deplete the slow and obsolete stock, and number three, ensure that we don't accumulate it going forward. And how was I able to do this? I was able to get my colleagues in supply chain and outside of supply chain, marketing, sales, technical, everybody together. We sit on a call periodically to look at this. And what we do is ensure at the end of each meeting, each team member has an action plan on what they have to do. If it's procurement, if the material is no longer needed, we don't use it anymore. Are you able to find ways of selling it? If it's something we can use in another SK or using another process, technical R&D, are we able to divert these materials to other uses? If there is no way we can do anything with it, we can sell, we can't reuse, finance. I think we have to explore options of writing this off to production and marketing. Some of these SKUs, we still have materials pending. Do we produce? Are you able to sell in some regions? Hope it doesn't affect the brand if we do that. And if and production, are you able to take up this additional load of production? And so things like that was what I was able to put that process in place to ensure that, slow and obsolete stock, becomes a problem of the past. And luckily for us, the 25% inventory reduction I achieved in that year, slow and obsolete stock reduction, took the bulk of it. It took about 15% of the 25% reduction.
All right, that was good. I just like to have a quick follow-up question. So what lessons did you learn in that whole process?
So lessons I learned. First and foremost, as a supply chain planner, definitely you need to understand the background story. So as a supply chain planner, you have a viewpoint of what you think about a particular situation. But once you start to have discussions with other functions, be it in supply chain or outside supply chain, it gives you a better understanding of what the situation actually is. And with that process, it made me understand why some of those things, had become slow and obsolete stock. First, understanding, the market has probably moved on from this SKU, or we had a project to switch from A to B, but we had to switch to B faster than planned. Maybe because, if we sold off A, by the time B is coming, it would start to become irrelevant, or we would have lost sales. So discussions like that opened my mind to understand, the reason, yes, why we had built up some of these things, one, two, and how we should progress moving forward.
All right, thank you. Any comments from the other panelists?
No, no comment from me. I think that was well answered.
Yeah.
Supply chain planning is not only about just the whole demand, supply, creating MRPs and creating capacity plans, right? Part of what I call those are the day-to-day tasks of the supply chain planning person. You also have to figure out, more often than not, the organization will look to you to partner with the continuous improvement folks to drive things in the planning space. So it's always good to always keep an eye out for continuous improvement opportunities within planning. Either it's a process, a way of working, a new tool, a better way to utilize the current system, something that drives. If it's not driving cash or service, it should be driving productivity. It should be reducing effort across the organization. So yeah, good job for that. Let me switch to a question around data. So supply chain planning oftentimes involves stitching a lot of data together from different sources, right? So you've got data from demand, sales, marketing. How do you ensure data accuracy when you are using or picking data for supply chain planning? How do you ensure that the data that you are using or the data that you are being fed is accurate, either from manufacturing floor or with the sales team or with the commercial team? What kind of steps do you take to ensure data accuracy?
Thank you very much, Jide. First things first, is um, from my experience. I'll use an example from my experience. And a situation that comes to mind is I'd gotten a request from demand and sales requesting what we would call an abnormal demand, one-off sales that the team had to meet. And one of the things I had to do to answer their question of are we able to supply them that is, I had to first go into SAP, which was the system I was using at that point, to check what my stock on hand of finished goods across all our supply channels, and also check if I'm able to um, address that request through existing stock, or also check inventory, material inventory, to see if I'm able to produce with available material. So I'd done that check, and I saw that I'd have to go the production route. So I moved back to the production team. I know we have the capacity. Do we have other resources available to meet up with this? And the answer was yes from the team. So I communicated to my demand and sales colleague that, oh yes, we're able to achieve this, but production would start in the following week. But going through my day, and doing further analysis through my day on other activities, I realized that a particular material that I need for that to make that happen was not actually available. Whereas when I pulled it earlier in the day, it showed that it was available. So what did I do? I go back to the production team because I had to do a deep dive, call the warehouse, call the material warehouse, what's happening, what happened here. And they're like, oh, this is what they have. But what you have is not what I'd seen on the system initially. And doing a root cause analysis to understand, what I understood was that that material was actually not consumed on the system by production. So they had done their back flushing way after they had, consumed the material. So what did I do to help correct the situation? So we put heads together, tried to see what we could do. So what we had understood is, one, um, just if one person had the access to do that back flushing activity. So we try to train others, especially shift managers, to be able to do that back flushing on the system. One, two, once production is about to happen, the team has to withhold the stock, withhold the material needed for that production, such that once I'm pulling my material stock on hand, that material is going to be going into a particular section of stock on hand showing restricted. It's not going to be unrestricted. It's going to be restricted at that point. So those were the actions I took to course correct that particular data error, to ensure that the data I was getting from that particular process was correct. And then I had to just land properly, I had to go back to my sales and demand colleague that I know we had communicated that we would be able to do this next week, but production cannot start next week. Production starts the week after, because we had to, this is what had happened, and this is what we've done. What we've done is we've communicated with our supplier. He's able to help us expedite that particular material, and it will be delivered next week. So production would have to start the following week, and the implication is, yes, we had communicated this, but we won't be able to do that. But so please, we need you to help manage your customer. Can they take alternative finished goods material? Are they able to wait, and give us a feedback?
Lucky.
That was a really tricky question. It was mostly technical, right? So it's good that in this case, to answer with the STAR methodologies is a bit tricky. But it's also good to mention how you do, what are the techniques you use to verify the accuracy of the data, right? I know that you spoke about SAP, something like that. But the first thing to do is to verify the source of the data. Is it reliable? And now you can do some data analysis, like checking the repeatability, the outlier. So there are so many tools out there that you can use to verify data accuracy. And as I said before, the first thing to do is to check the source. Is it reliable? Is it from the good source? And then when you have all those information, you have to analyze. For example, you know that the daily production, for example, is 300. In your data, you will see like 1,000. You cannot use that information to make the average, for example. You have to remove the information and then work with the mostly accurate information. So that treatment upfront is very important to ensure data accuracy, because if you don't have accurate data, you will not make a good decision. So GD, that was a very good question, and I think that every scheduler, production planner work with data almost every day. And now we have artificial intelligence that can help us also to better manage our data information. Thank you.
Right.
I don't have any other I don't have any other addition to what has been said. But he presented very well, which was what I was looking out for. The presentation was well. He flowed as he has always done. So nothing different for me.
Okay, that was good. So it was good. So data accuracy, data integrity. We talked about SAP. We talked about backflush, the kind of things that can typically impact negatively on a planner's commitment, right? So you go and commit something to sales, and then the folks on the line, they do something differently, and then you go back and you check and you find out, oh, what I committed was is I have to go back and recommit my commitment. it's always, but that's the life of a planner, right? So when you're in supply chain planning, those are the kind of thing. And like Lucky said, being able to articulate, what do you use? So different companies and different organizations use different things to validate data accuracy and data integrity, right? So you just need to be able to state something that speaks to what you are used to, right? So for instance, you talk about backflush, somebody didn't do something correctly, and then remediating that, which was something that I really liked. Remediating that and ensuring that every person within that organization, within that production floor, understood when to go and complete their process orders, record their process orders and all of those things, so that everybody is trained at the same level. Otherwise, that problem will repeat itself again at some point in the future, right? So that was a good one to have that conversation and get everybody trained. In that kind of instance, something that probably would be good, that is very common to everybody, cycle counting, right? So is this material always cycle counted? When was the last time it was counted? What's been the inventory record accuracy of this material over the last call it 3 months or 6 months? Well, this particular item that sales is requesting for as an incremental business activity, what are the critical materials that is utilized in that product? What's been the inventory record accuracy, so that at least I can feel comfortable and confident that what I'm seeing in the system is what is matching the books, right? So mentioning something like that is very common across most industries, helps the interviewer to know that, okay, at least you have some ways or means of validating data accuracy in your work, day-to-day work, right? Of course, every organization will eventually have their own data integrity, ways of measuring data integrity, right? So yeah, I don't want to start going into my experience on data integrity. Otherwise, we will not end the call today, right? Okay, let me see if I've got one more question that I want to ask, and then I'm going to leave it to Bayan and Lucky, and then if there are no other questions, we'll wrap it up. Yeah. Talk about disruptions. Talk about demand planning. Okay, so let's talk about, let me ask a core demand planning question. So effective demand planning is very crucial for optimizing inventory levels. So we've been talking about forecast and all whatnot since the start of this interview. So tell me, discuss or share your approach to demand planning and demand forecasting, including the methods that you've used in the past or the methods you've encountered as a supply planner working alongside and collaborating with a demand planner that you've used in the past. And how do you ensure accuracy in demand forecasts or demand plans, as the case may be?
I like that question.
Mm, mm. Okay. As a supply planner, I think I'll start from the end. As a supply planner, one of the things I do to ensure accuracy within the demand forecast I'm receiving. First and foremost is history. History is always there for me to look at. I look at what we have going forward, and I look back to see what it is that we have done. So, first things first, to see where I have huge disparities within the product family, because um, if there's any huge disparity, I go back to my demand planner one to understand why am I having this positive change, or why am I having this negative movement? Why are you reducing the forecast, or why are you increasing it? To understand what's going on. Is the increment because of a promotion coming through? Is the increment because prices have been changed? Or is the reduction because prices have been changed either upwards or downwards? Or is there a situation in the market maybe happening with your competitor, or are there economic conditions happening that are moving the demand upwards or downwards? So that's the first thing I do as a supply planner: compare the past with the future and try to understand um, why we have the change going upwards or downwards. And as a supply planner, even though looking at the product family is very important, also looking on SKU basis is also very important, because you could have five SKUs in a particular product family and there's been a lot of swing in there, and you'd have that throwing up your inventory in a different direction. So I also have to do that check and also go through the same process and understand why there's been movement within that family. So um, also, I also need to keep track of forecast accuracy to ensure, yes, this is what we said we'll do. This is what we are doing, and understand the reason for having the positives and the negatives, why we are underselling and why we are overselling, because all of that informs the decisions I will be taking on different supply strategies that I'll be putting in place to ensure that supply always meets up with demand.
Okay. Great answer. Very concise. I think the only thing that was lacking there is it's a demand planning question, right? And even if you don't have experience in a particular question, don't try to. So for an experienced interviewer will know when you are making up stuff, right? Um, don't try to make up stuff, right? If it's perfectly okay to say, look, I cannot think of a scenario right now, but is it okay if we come back to this question at the end of the interview? It's perfectly okay to say that, right? So
Okay.
a lot of people, want to just answer the question. It's perfect, especially when the interviewer is showing you. Again, you have to read the room, right? If the interviewer is showing you, the interview is very collaborative, and the interviewer is probing and just really interested in knowing what your antecedents are. There's nothing wrong in saying, can we get back to the question while I gather my thoughts, and then write down, right? So sometimes people don't go into this. People go into interviews with thinking that it's an inquisition, right? It's not a court of law. It's not a lawyer asking you, question. Go in with the writing material, write down the question, and kind of articulate your thought, articulate your thoughts, right? And then at the end of the interview, right, when the interviewer is wrapping up, let's say they are wrapping up and they're saying, hey, okay, do you have any questions you have for me? If they did not go back to that question, use that opportunity to go back to that question, right? Use that opportunity to say, hey, by the way, the question you asked me, thinking about it right now, this and this and this and this and this and that, and then you can answer the question. That way, you've given yourself enough time to kind of, articulate and recollect yourself. So go kind of study or refresh your memory on the steps for demand planning, right? So things like, understanding assumptions, creating a statistical forecast, a statistical base, getting people into a consensus to arrive at a consensus, validating that consensus, and then transmitting the data to the upstream and the downstream parts of the business that require the forecast. So you need to transmit the forecast, right? And then measuring and tracking performance. Like you said, are we doing what we said we're going to do? And course correcting and correcting future forecasts based on those KPIs and those performance metrics. I think those are, if I asked that kind of question, those are the kind of things I'll be looking for, right? The framework for demand planning and forecasting, the steps, maintain data, understand assumptions, create a statistical forecast using, SAP or APO or any of the tools, right? Getting people cross-functionals into a consensus to discuss the baseline, looking at promotions and everything, and then coming up with what is a consensus forecast, and then shifting that consensus forecast in the system to the supply part of the system and to the logistics part and to the manufacturing part. And then you are done. Mm-hmm. And then you talk about measuring performance and all whatnot, right?
Okay. So sorry, I was going to ask. So for me, I've not would I say I've not done a lot in demand planning. That was why I went the route of how I would address it from a supply point of view. But could I have addressed it, which is one of the things you said of if I find myself in this situation, this is how I'll take it out, as you said, statistical points. Okay, all right.
Yeah, exactly, right. So if you've never experienced it before, there's always a textbook answer to everything, right? What I want to see as a hiring manager is this person able to, even though I know it's a textbook answer, and even though I'm looking at your resume, right? So I have your resume in front of me, and I know that, okay, this person has not really done demand planning at the core of it, right? But I'm asking them a demand planning question. So I'm not expecting that they will be able to answer me the way somebody who's been a demand planning analyst, they will not be able to answer me that way, but at least some kind of textbook answer would be okay, this person, at least attempted it. So, okay, that's all the questions that I have. I didn't know, Lucky, you wanted
to... No, we are running out of time. I don't know.
Yeah, so we might have time for Lucky, but I don't want us to miss the opportunity to ask Opeyemi if he has a specific question for you guys as well. So Yemi, it's an opportunity for you to ask questions as well.
Okay. Oh, I'm seeing a question commentary in the chat, answering questions you don't have experience on. Okay. I think one of the major feedback I've gotten throughout is the landing part of the question. And I take my mind back maybe to the most recent interview I had done. And luckily for me, the person was like, Jide, asking me to land, but I think I wasn't still landing correctly, and the person was always moving on. So my question, I know I'm getting feedback here, but definitely can I ask for feedback after interviews too?
Yes, it's correct to ask. No problem. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
we can do that.
Absolutely. You can ask for feedback after interviews.
Mhm.
Even if you know, as not all interviews will result in landing a role, even when that email that we all don't like to see comes, right? Be okay to ask that question. How could I have done better? Right? Every hiring manager, what I try to do, I mean, every hiring manager is different, but what I try to do is every person that I interview, if you know, for whatever reason they are not moving on to the next stage, it's one of two things that I do. Either I write a comprehensive, this is what you didn't do well that you need to go and brush up on, or I tell talent acquisition, I want to have a debrief session with this person. So I have a conversation with the person. So it's not a question of, you know, I didn't hire you today. It doesn't mean that 2 years from now I'm not going to hire you. But I want to make sure that you get the benefit of speaking to me for the next person that is going to interview you. So ask for it, and sometimes they might offer to give it. Some hiring managers are lazy; they don't want to do it. I enjoy doing it, but ask for it nonetheless.
Okay, okay.
So
Uh,
here is okay, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead, Biodun. I was going to jump into
Yeah.
another question, but yeah, let me
Oh,
on
okay.
that.
So my thought here for Opeyemi is, if you have any way that you think it should um always try to close out effectively to convert an interview to a job offer, either his strategy, his tactics, or whatnot. What would you recommend for him from each of the panelists?
I think for me is it's number one. You know, you're showing that you know your stuff. That's number one, right? Showing that you know your stuff, and which you demonstrated to do. You know, all of the terminologies, technicalities, the actions that you've taken. Believe me, if I was hiring for a supply planner or a senior supply planner or stuff like that, I would it will I will it will be quite a conversation if somebody will tell me don't hire this person immediately, right? Because again, it's some as an interviewer, I'm thinking, will I be in a lot of pain if I hire this person? And what I'm getting from you is the answer is I will not be in a lot of pain, right? So that's one. Number two is besides your landing, which we've talked about, we covered it a lot. Um, be confident and try to stay away from. I noticed that you were always referring to peculiarities of the Nigerian environment. So Harmattan, things that somebody will not be able to relate to, right? Try to stay away from those, right? So what I would say is try to stay away from things that are not easily relatable. So if you're going to talk about, you know, Harmattan as a season, I would pretty much talk about, you know, the winter time in Nigeria. Yes, we don't have winter in Nigeria, but you know that for us is the cold time in Nigeria, right? So the winter, the cold period in Nigeria, so the person can relate to what they're talking about. Is there any other thing? I think you know, just being able to learn and being able to speak to those KPIs are pretty important. In supply chain planning, everything is about, hey, you understand the technicalities of it, B, you understand how to drive and resolve conflict, and C, you understand how to leverage those KPIs in your conversations. I cannot imagine going through a supply chain planning interview and I will not mention case fill rate. I will not mention, you know, on time in full. I will not mention forecast accuracy. I, I don't think that will, if that will happen, I would not think that the person has sufficient experience in supply chain planning to take a role as a planner, because those are the things that you're going to be dealing with day in, day out. And of course, mentioning the software. We didn't talk technology today because we're running out of time, but saying something about that I use the software. Yes, you mentioned SAP, which was great, right? But what other softwares have you used besides SAP? right? So mentioning some of the software, because what that can do to me as a hiring manager is this person has adaptability. They work with SAP and they've worked with something else. So if they are coming into my organization and they are going to be working with Oracle, I don't expect that they are going to struggle. They will have a ramp up curve and a ramp up time, but they already understand the basics because they've been able to cross from one ERP or software or technology to another one. And that's something you really need to showcase in a supply chain planning interview.
Okay, thanks so much. Lucky.
I will go next. Okay, thank you. So, Opeyemi, what I will advise you is to prepare a strong elevator pitch to introduce yourself in less than 3 minutes, because that first impression counts a lot. Next is, I know that there are a lot of questions out there, but it's always good to prepare some answers. And if you are facing behavioral, situational questions, always think about STAR technique: situation, task, action, and result. That's very important. And lastly, interview is a conversation. It's not a one-man show. So prepare 3 questions to ask to interviewers, just to deepen, just to show interest on the company, on the profile, on the role. Is also a good exercise to do. So that's my advice for you today.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, finally, Bio.
Okay. Okay. I mean, well done today. I know we've taken you through a lot. But for me, my two, in addition to what everybody has said, is, and I'm going to say that this is something I learned on this platform, and that is, if you are doing interviews, prepare your stories. Um, I don't know, Mr. Jida alluded to it at the beginning. Prepare your stories. What? So the way this works for me is, if I look at it and I look at if somebody tells me they're going to interview me for 45 minutes, so I assume that there must be a minimum of 6 to 7 behavioral questions that must come in that 45-minute interview. So I prepare my stories. One of my stories, Lucky talked about the star format. You prepare different scenarios with the star format. You already have it. One of the things that I assumed you were doing was that you were trying to bring your answers off hand. So you were thinking, oh, what stories should I put? Prepare your stories. Let's say you prepare 7 stories, and then we ask you something about demand planning. You have a story that is not necessarily demand. Oh, don't forget, we don't know your stories, but so you can switch stories to meet the question. You get. We don't know the stories, but you already have a story. You have the situation, you have the task, you already have the action, and you have the result. So, and was always when they ask you a question about, a question of sustainability, how did you work on sustainability? But you had prepared a question that talked about an improvement project, and then they don't ask you improvement. You bring out the story and use it, because almost every sustainability project is an improvement project. You get. See, so that way you are not scrambling in your head, because sometimes, but this is me again. When you were having a conversation today, I was looking at you, and I'm thinking, sometimes I'm thinking you are scrambling to get a story, then you would now give us something, But if there's a story prepared, it makes it easy. And then the other thing, like Lucky said, always have minimum of 3 questions to ask the interviewers. One of the first things I do Here, when they give you your interview panel or your interview person, just go to LinkedIn and search them up, look at them, and then ask a question. I had an interview some time ago, and my final interviewer was one the senior manager, the senior partner, and I asked him, how does this business make money? It was a consulting firm. How does the business make money? How does the business ensure business continuity? I'm joining the team. How do I ensure that the business after 6 months does not say last in first out, and then the man laughed? You understand? So it shows that because again, like what we said, every interview is a conversation. They need you as much as you need them. You know, we shouldn't get to the point where we think that it's a one-way street. You are the one that needs the money. No, they need your skills. So you must be able to ask quick question. If this was a role that was occupied by somebody, you are free to ask, what happened to the last occupant of the seat? You understand? What happened to the last occupant of the seat? What happened to the previous? You know, but you need to ask. Make sure you have some standard solid questions. But apart from that, that's very good. Um, you did very well today. Thank you. That's it for me.
Awesome. Yeah. So so if you are there, you've been listening all this time. I want us to use this opportunity to appreciate everybody who have contributed here. You know, they've just dedicated 2 hours of their time, right? With all those numbers of, all those years of experience, guys. What do you think we'll be charging you today? But we're doing it for free because we are seeing you as an ambassador for the community, and once you get into the industry, you're also contributing back to add value to the community. So let us congratulate Opeyemi in advance, and then also to appreciate all the interview panelists here. Lucky, thanks for joining us. This is your first time, but I think you kind of have an idea of what we do here now. All right. So you're welcome. And
Well,
Bayo, thanks for joining from Saskatoon as well. Without much ado, we'd like to close shop today. But I have a link in the comment section if anyone wants to connect, for specific assessment, or you want some insights about your career development or whatnot. You can use that link to set up a 15 minutes phone call, and then we could take it from there. And I've also shared